Amen. This morning when I parked out there and was walking in, I looked at my watch and I said, oh, it's the 13th of August. And I looked around and I just said, you know what? Thank you, Jesus, that there's no smoke. Because that is just such a nice thing to not have. So hopefully it stays that way. Look north. Is it smoking? Well, good thing I said it this morning. Yes. At Twin Creeks? Well, it was bound to happen, I guess. Proverbs 24, verse 1 says, do not be envious of evil men, nor desire to be with them, for their hearts devise violence, and their lips talk of troublemaking. Solomon reminding his sons here, we don't want to be envious of evil men, which if you think about it is a kind of a really foolish thing to do, to look at someone who's evil, someone who doesn't know the Lord, and to be envious or jealous of their life or their lifestyle or what they have. Because you don't want to be envious. You don't want to be jealous of evil men, nor do you want to desire to be with them. Oh, if I could only hang out with this, crowd like this. And the reason is because of verse 2, for their hearts they devise violence, and their lips talk of troublemaking. Their hearts, there's really no good in their hearts, and there's really no good that comes out of their lips. So they're really not worth hanging out with, and they're not worth being envious of. Verse 3 says, through wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. By knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Through wisdom a house gets built, Solomon says. By understanding, it gets established and stable. By knowledge, the rooms of the house get filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Now, he's probably not just, obviously talking about building a house, but like building a house, like building a family. Like you're building a family with, you got wisdom, you got godly wisdom, and it gets built and established, and it grows, and there's blessings with that when you do things God's way. Verses 5 and 6 says, a wise man is strong. Yes, a man of knowledge increases strength. For by wise counsel you will wage your own war, and in the multitude of counselors there is safety. A wise man, he's strong. Yes, a man of knowledge, increasing in strength. For, verse 6, by wise counsel you will wage your own war, and in the multitude of counselors, and he's kind of talked about this before in Proverbs, but in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. Now, obviously, there's a contingency there, and that's the multitude of wise counselors. But in the multitude of wise counselors, there's safety. So you're getting ready to make a decision. It, might be worth asking some wise people around you. What do you think about going in this direction, or me getting involved in this thing, or me stopping this thing? And you can receive wise counsel, and in that there's safety. Verse 7, wisdom is too lofty for a fool. He does not open his mouth in the gate. He who plots to do evil will be called a schemer. The devising of foolishness is sin, and the scoffer is an abomination to men. He who plots to do evil, who's planning to do evil, who's thinking about doing evil, will be called a schemer. Someone who's always just sitting around thinking about how they can do evil things. They're scheming things up in their mind all the time. Verse 9, the devising of foolishness is sin. The planning of foolishness is sin. Participating in it is sin, but the devising of it, the planning of foolishness is also sin, and the scoffer is an abomination to men. So Solomon reminds us of something here that Jesus taught us about, and that's sin's not just something we do with our actions, but it's also something that we can do with our minds. So even to devise foolishness could be seen as sin. That's why Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 and 5, he warned us about what we think about and how we need to be careful because of this. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. Paul says, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, they're not fleshly, but they're mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Bringing our thoughts captive. Because if we just let our thoughts run amok, run wild, we might find ourselves starting to devise, think about doing foolish things, and Well, Solomon says that's sinful. So the way that we do that is we start learning how to control our thoughts. Some people go, well, I just can't control my thoughts. Well, you can't always control what you first think about, but you definitely can control what you continue to think about. Is Jordan in here? That's embarrassing. He has some clever thing that he heard his dad say once about, you can't stop a bird. Avery knows. He says it all the time. You can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop it from nesting there. Yeah. I prefer you can't stop a bird from pooping on your head, but you can stop it from nesting there. Verse 10, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Deliver those who are drawn towards death and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? So verses 11 through 12, there's this warning, and he says there in verse 11, deliver those who are drawn towards death, rescue them, deliver them, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. Here's someone that you know who's heading in a bad direction, and you have the type of relationship in their life where you can kind of help them, rescue them. He says, but you don't. You see them stumbling to the slaughter or stumbling to their death, and you could rescue them. Verse 12, and then if you say, this is your excuse, oh, surely we didn't know this. Does not he, the Lord who weighs the hearts, consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? Essentially what Solomon says here is if you're in a situation where you can do something, you should do something. When it comes to rescuing someone from doing evil or seriously hurting themselves or others, if you have the ability to do something, you should intervene and do something, because if you don't and your excuse is, you saw it and you look the other way and you're just like, oh, Lord, I didn't really know about it. Well, the one who knows your heart, the one who weighs your heart and actually knows the truth, he's watching, and you're not going to be able to fool him. Verses 13 and 14, my son, eat honey because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to your taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be to your soul. If you have found it, there is a prospect, and your hope will not be cut off. First part, you're thinking, this isn't real spiritual, but he makes this true statement, then he attaches the spiritual part to it. Verse 13, my son, eat honey because it is good. Amen? Honey is good. So he says, my son, eat honey because it is good, and the honeycomb, which is sweet to your taste, so shall, just like honey is good to your taste, verse 14, so shall the knowledge of wisdom be to your soul. If you have found it, there is no prospect, or there is a prospect, and your hope will not be cut off. Just like honey is good for you to eat, so too getting knowledge and wisdom is good for your soul. It's satisfying, it's pleasant. Something interesting about honey, it's actually the only food on the planet that doesn't go bad. Like they found honey from Egypt from thousands of years ago, and it's still good. Honey, it gets hard, kind of, it'll crystallize, but it doesn't rot, it doesn't go bad. So just like honey is pleasant and tasty and a good treat, and it doesn't go bad, it doesn't expire, we could say, so too wisdom and knowledge to our souls, it's like honey. It's pleasant, but it also lasts forever. Verse 15 and 16. Do not lie in wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Do not plunder his resting place. For a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked shall fall by calamity. That's a good one there in Proverbs 24. Verse 15 first, he says, don't lie in wait. Don't just be waiting, sneaking. Don't lie in wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Don't plunder his resting place. For, verse 16, a righteous man may fall 7 times, and he rises again. That's encouraging, honestly, to me. The Bible could say a righteous man never falls, and then we'd all be sunk. And then I guess in a sense that's true as far as true righteousness from ourselves. The only one who is righteous we know is Jesus, and he never fell. But as people who are righteous in the sense of believers in the Lord, even if you are righteous, the contingency is not that you never fall, it's that even if you fall, and he goes, even if you fall 7 times, what kind of divides and shows the righteous from the wicked is that even though a righteous man may fall, he gets back up. So it's not, what's it been said? The Christian life is not about how high you can climb. It's not about how far you can go. It's about how well you bounce back up. That's really what the Christian life is all about. You've fallen, but you can get back up. It's like riding a horse. You fall off, you get back on. And that's what makes the difference. One of my favorite examples of this in the New Testament, we look at the life of Peter, and Peter says stupid things and even does stupid things there towards the end of Jesus' life and denying him 3 times. But the thing that made Peter so awesome is that he got back on. He got back up. You look at the life of David, Solomon's dad, Solomon who's writing this, David, he fell, and he fell hard. And he fell a lot farther down than a lot of kings. And one thing that I always like looking at in the Bible is looking at the first king of Israel, Saul, and looking at the second king of Israel, David, and realizing if you want to compare sin, which isn't real smart to do, but it's fun sometimes, if you want to compare sin, David's sin was way worse than Saul's sin, from our eyes at least. The things that David did were terrible. And yet, in Saul's life, Saul gets off base and the Lord takes the kingdom away from him and gives it to David. But David gets way off base, and yet the Lord continues with David. The Lord restores David, and David continues on with a legacy. And the difference is that although David messed up big time, he's always described there as a man after God's own heart, even though he fell really big. So you might find yourself falling. Let's say it this way. You will find yourself falling as you follow after Jesus. Don't be discouraged. Get back up. Keep on going. That's what makes the difference. Verses 17 and 18, do not rejoice when your enemy falls. Oh, you can fall 7 times and get back up. Speaking of falling, Solomon says, don't rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, which can be hard to do because there's something kind of satisfactory when that person that drives you nuts trips and you see it, right? Or you see, you're watching out your window and they back into their own mailbox or something, and you're just kind of like, ha, sucker, serves you right. And Solomon just goes, we really don't want that attitude even against our enemies, because he says, don't rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it, and it displeases him, and he turns away his wrath from him. God might see you finding joy in their bad day, and then God decides, well, I'm not going to give them a bad day anymore, and you actually help them by finding pleasure out of their calamity, Solomon says. So you see it happen, don't take joy in it. And when I read this, it kind of reminded me of this enemy that David had in 2 Samuel chapter 16. Studying the life of David is one of my favorite things to look at, but here in 2 Samuel chapter 16, this is just like such a funny thing that we have in God's word, as David the king has to deal with this guy named Shimei, who's he's just an enemy of David, and he just annoys David greatly. 2 Samuel chapter 16, starting in verse 5 says, now when King David came to Baram, there was a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. Coming from there, he came out cursing continuously as he came. And he threw stones at David and at the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men, they were on his right hand and on his left. So Shimei, he said to them, he said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue, and the Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place that you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom, your son. This is when David's son Absalom was creating a rebellion there in the kingdom. So now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. And Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take off his head. That's a good assistant to have. Not the best idea, but you want guys by you that are willing at least. Verse 10, but David said this, what have I to do with you, you son of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so? And David said to Abishai and all his servants, see how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjamite? Let him alone. and let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be, David says, it may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men, they went along the road, Shimei went along the hilltop opposite him, and cursed as he went, throwing stones at him and kicking up dust. Now the king and all the people, they went with him. They became weary, so they refreshed themselves there. Shimei creating a whole lot of drama, just swearing at David. You're a scoundrel. You're ruling where Saul should be ruling. You have no right being a king. Throwing rocks at him even. And David's assistant goes, David, I could just chop his head off if you'd like. David goes, no. He goes, who am I to say God didn't tell him to come out here and curse me? He goes, and if I go up and tell him you shouldn't curse me and he believes God told him to, he's going to believe God over me. So he goes, I don't really need to stop him from doing what he's doing. David goes, leave him alone. Maybe God will see how mean he's being to me, and God will have some compassion on me. So they just keep going, and Shimei just keeps walking the hillside, throwing rocks and cursing at him. But this attitude towards our enemies is what we see talked about back in the Proverbs and illustrated there in 2 Samuel. And that is, just don't rejoice when bad things come upon them, and do not let your heart be glad when they stumble. Verses 19 and 20 in Proverbs 24 says, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the wicked, for there will be no prospect for the evil man. The lamp of the wicked will be put out. Don't become, or do not fret over evildoers. We can get so worried about evil that's going on in our world, and there's a lot of evil. But Psalmist says, don't worry about that, don't fret about it, nor be envious of the wicked, kind of like he told us back in verse 1. For there will be no prospect for the evil man. There's really no future. He doesn't have a great thing going for him. The lamp of the wicked will be put out. My son, fear the Lord and the king. Do not associate with those given to change, for their calamity will rise suddenly, and who knows the ruins those two can bring. Fear the Lord and the king. Honor God and honor the king, honor the one in charge, Solomon says, which is real easy for him to say because he is the king, so he writes that. But Peter would write in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17, to the New Testament church, he tells us to honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, and honor the king. So he goes, you know what, fear God, respect him, respect the king, he who's in authority over you. For their calamity, verse 22, will rise suddenly, and who knows the ruin those two can bring. Verse 23, these things also belong to the wise. It's not good to show partiality and judgment. James talks about this just in general in the New Testament. He goes, don't show partiality. Someone walks into church, James says, and they're dressed really nice. Someone else walks into church and they stink and there's holes in their clothes and they're dirty. He says, and if you go up to the guy who's dressed really nice and you're nice to him and you ignore the one who's dressed poorly, he goes, don't do that. Don't show partiality. And Solomon here is saying don't do that specifically when it comes to judgment, to making a ruling about something. Don't be so quick to assume what's right just based on the outer appearance. Verse 24, he who says to the wicked, you are righteous, him the people will curse. Nations will abhor him. But those who rebuke the wicked will have delight, and a good blessing will come upon them. Verse 26, I think this is Carson's favorite verse right now in the Bible. He who gives a right answer kisses the lips. Sheesh. There's a pickup line in there somewhere. You walk up to the girl you like and you ask her a pretty obvious question. What color is the sky? She says blue. You say right. You kiss her. And she goes, what are you doing? And you say, being biblical. He who gives a right answer kisses the lips, verse 27. Maybe don't do that. It depends on the situation, quite honestly. Prepare your outside work, make it fit for yourself in the field, and afterward build your house. In verse 27, he's talking about priorities. You got a guy who's farming. He goes, you need to prepare your outside work. You need to plant your field and take care of it. And then you can make it fit for yourself in the field. And then afterwards, you can build your house. You got to have your job in order so that it can be producing, so that then you can have the house that the job that the house needs the job in order for the house to exist. He goes, so this is the proper order of things, the right priorities. You don't just want to be like, oh, I'm going to neglect my job, my field, so that I can just, focus on this house, because then your life's not going to be in balance there and it's not going to work out. Verse 28, do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause, for would you deceive with your lips? Do not say, I will do to him just as he has done to me. I will render to man according to his work. That can be a hard one. Sometimes the hardest people for people to deal with is the people that live right next to them. Praise God, my neighbors get along well with me. Actually, I've been waiting to tell this story, and since it's about neighbors, I can just say it. When I was gone to the Republic of Georgia, Jordan and I were gone for about 2 whole weeks, you guys know. And the last night, the Saturday night, we're in McCall, we're at the Airbnb we rented as we went to Brock's wedding, and I'm sleeping there, and I awake at about 9:30, went to bed early. I awake at about 9:30 to my phone. It's in the bed with me vibrating. And I answer it, and it's my roommate, Chase. And he's leaving tomorrow. He's not here tonight, so I'll tell this story about him. But he goes, me and my friend, we just had the cops called on us, and they came to the house. And I was like, interesting. I said, what happened? And he goes, well, yesterday, this random stuff just showed up at your house. I said, really? Like, what kind of stuff? And he goes, like a tackle box and like a bow and then like a bear hide, like a bear rug. And he goes, he goes, I think someone's staying here. And he's staying there, right? Because he's my roommate, but we don't really lock our doors. So he's like, I think someone's staying here. And I left my pistol on the kitchen table. And so he decides to search the house with his buddy. And no one's in the house, but then they had to go to dinner, so they went to dinner. And his genius idea was, well, maybe whoever's staying in the house who brought these random things is they hear me pull up, and they run away when I come. So he sends his buddy, Kyle, with my shotgun down the alley up above, and he decides to whip into my house, the driveway, with the pistol. Kyle's running down my alleyway with a shotgun, hops over my fence. The neighbors are watching all this happen. And they call the cops thinking that these guys are intruding on my house. So these 2 boys do a raid on my house. They realize no one's there. They sit down to start watching Netflix. All of a sudden, 10 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. Literally, there's like 7 cops surrounding my house with their guns pulled, trying to figure out what's going on. So it got really interesting. But I don't have any problems with my neighbors. And just the other day, this neighbor walked out to me. She goes, hey, I wanted to apologize about that thing that happened when you were gone. I said, please. I said, I see it as an act of love. I said, you didn't know what was going on. You were just trying to take care of things. So anyway, the point is some people don't get along with their neighbors, and some neighbors call the cops on people when you're gone, which is okay. But what verse were we at? Verse 28 and 29. Oh, the point was my mom brought these things up and left them while I was gone. They were my things. And it's like, you should have, Chase, if you just would have asked, I would have said, yeah, the bear rug, the bow, and the tackle box are mine. But he goes, I didn't want to bother you. You were only 2 days away from coming home. I didn't want to worry you. Yes, it's like, okay, just run around the town with a shotgun then and see what happens. Verse 29, do not say, I will do to him just as he has done to me. I will render to the man according to his works. It's easy for us to want to get even. My neighbor did this to me, so I'm going to get back at them. He goes, you don't want to do that. Verse 30, I went by the field of the lazy man and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding. And there it was, all overgrown with thorns, and its surface was covered with needles. Its stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered it well, and I looked on it, and I received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, so shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. That verses 30 through 34, it's one whole kind of big proverb. It's just this discouragement against laziness. He goes, I walk by the field of a lazy man, and no work has been done. Nothing good has been planted. The weeds and the thorns are overgrowing. And this guy's attitude is verse 33. A little bit of sleep, a little bit of slumber, a little bit of folding of the hands to rest. What could it hurt? And the wisdom is verse 34. So shall poverty come like a prowler. Laziness can sneak up on us. And, there's wisdom in resting, but the Bible definitely speaks negatively about laziness. And laziness can sneak up on us physically, but it also can sneak up on us spiritually. It's like, I just don't really feel like reading the Bible today, and then today turns into tomorrow, then tomorrow turns into 2 weeks, then 2 weeks turns into 2 months, or whatever the case might be. So just watch out for this laziness, because it'll just kind of sneak up on you like a prowler. Proverbs 25, verse 1 says, "These also are proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied." So Solomon didn't put these in. Solomon wrote them, but then later on, King Hezekiah took these writings of Solomon and put them in to finish out this book of Proverbs. Now, if you remember King Hezekiah, he was a good king. We learn about him in 2 Chronicles chapter 29. His dad was a bad king, but King Hezekiah was a good king. He became king when he was, I think 25 or 29. Let's see here. 2 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 1 says, "Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father David had done." Specifically, what makes Hezekiah a great guy is found in 2 Chronicles 29, verse 3. "In the first year of his reign, in the first month, he opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them." His dad had neglected the temple and the house of the Lord. He'd actually kind of shut them up, closed down the shop of worshiping the Lord, Hezekiah's dad. But now that Hezekiah is in charge, this first month in charge, he opens those doors of the temple back up, allowing God's people to worship him how he desires to be worshiped, and gets them back on track. So that's what Hezekiah is kind of known for, and he puts these sayings of Solomon here throughout the last part of the book of Proverbs. Verse 2 says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search out a matter." It's God's glory to conceal. It's king's glory to search out what is concealed. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of look at this verse 2. First of all, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. That word conceal is the same word that's used for cover. Oftentimes when we talk about how God's covered our sin, kind of atoned for our sin. So it's the glory of God to cover our sin, we could say, or to deal with our sin. God's glory, God gets glorified in the work of him concealing and covering our sin. That's true. But this kind of goes together in verse 2 where it says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. As if God's concealing something, that kings are finding glory in searching out what God has concealed. It wouldn't make sense maybe that's talking about sin that God's covered and then kings are searching it out. But I think it's talking about wisdom, which is kind of the point of the book of Proverbs. God's glory is to conceal wisdom, and man's glory is to search out the things that God has concealed. You go, well, why is God hiding? Why is God concealing wisdom? He's not hiding it so that we won't find it. He's hiding it so that we will find it. Think of like an Easter egg hunt. You're hiding it, yeah, but you're hiding it in the intention for the kid to find it. And when the kid finds it, they have this great joy of finding the treasure, of finding the thing. And that's how wisdom works with us in the Lord. As we go out and we find it, it glories us as it's also glorying him. Verse 3 is, "The heavens for height and the earth for depth, so the heart of kings is unsearchable." Try to figure out what a politician's up to. Unsearchable heart of kings. Verse 4, "Take away the dross from silver, and it will go to the silversmith for jewelry." The dross, the impurities, you take away the impurities, the dross from the silver, and then it'll go to the silversmith to be made into some jewelry. In the same way, you take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Just like dross, the impurities of silver devalue silver, so you want to get rid of it. Unrighteous, wicked people before a king devalues him, affects him, so you take that away, and he actually gets established in righteousness. He can do things better. Verses 6 and 7, "Do not exalt yourself in the presence of the king, and do not stand in the place of the great. For it's better that he say to you, 'Come up here,' than that you should be put low in the presence of the prince whom your eyes have seen." He talked about this also earlier in Proverbs, and it's like you get invited, to the palace. You're like, I must be someone special. So you walk in like you own the place, and you sit in the best seat in the house, and the king has to come up and go, that's actually not for you. Your place is at that table, and you get demoted. He goes, it's better to just walk in humbly, and if the king wants you, he'll say, come up here, and then you can actually go up, and you haven't made a fool out of yourself. Verses 8, 9, and 10 says, do not go this might get some of us. Do not go hastily to court, for what will you do in the end when your neighbor has put you to shame? Debate your case with your neighbor, and don't disclose the secrets to another, lest he who hears it expose your shame and your reputation be ruined. First of all, there, verse 8, he says, don't go hastily to court, for what will you do in the end when your neighbor has put you to shame? It's easy to jump on the suing bandwagon so quickly. He goes, you want to be careful with that. In the New Testament, Paul warns about that in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, particularly amongst believers. He goes, we really shouldn't have to get the law involved. If we're both surrendered over to Jesus, then we should be able to come to some sort of terms. And he actually says, Paul's words, not mine, in 1 Corinthians 6, he says it's shameful for unbelievers to have to go in front of the earthly court and have to get problems dealt with. Because if two people are actually surrendered to Jesus, they should be able to figure how they can get on the same page. So he goes, it's just shameful is what it is. And sometimes it happens, but it's not good, and it's a bad witness, he says. So he goes, be careful, run into the court just to sue your neighbor, because you're going to bring shame. Verse 9. Here's what you should do. Debate your case with your neighbor. Work it out with the person who you have the problem with. And then, here's really interesting, don't disclose the secret to another, or keep your business your business. There's a concept. It's interesting, he doesn't say debate your case with your neighbor and then post it on Facebook. But post it on Facebook in a cryptic way. Well, no one really knows what's going on, but they know that you're getting the attention you want, right? These are what people do. So he says, don't disclose what you dealt with. You got it dealt with, then it was dealt with, and it's been dealt with the person that it needed to be dealt with, and now you can move on. Lest, verse 10, he who hears it exposes your shame, and your reputation could be ruined, he says. Verses 11 and 12, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and settings of silver. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear. A word fitly spoken, just the right word at the right time. Someone who just shares the right thing for the situation, speaks wisdom, speaks comfort, speaks exhortation, speaks even warning into your life. Just that right word at the right time. It's just valuable. It's like apples of gold and settings of silver. It's like an earring of gold or an ornament of fine gold, or all of these great things. Just having that right thing to speak into a situation. Verse 13, like the cold of snow in the time of harvest, is a faithful messenger to those who send him, for he refreshes the soul of his masters. Harvest time is a hot time. People are cutting hay. You're going to harvest your garden here in a little bit. It's still hot during harvest time. So he goes, like a nice cold snow when it's really hot outside at harvest time, that's what a faithful messenger to those who send him, for the refreshing of the soul of his master. Whoever falsely boasts of giving is like a cloud and wind without rain. You falsely boast in what kind of talent or what you have to offer, or even maybe what you gave. He says that person's just kind of a disappointment. They're just kind of empty. They're just like a cloud or wind without any rain. And I have this theory about clouds. If it's going to be cloudy, it might as well be raining. I really don't have much use for clouds that aren't going to produce rain. I'd rather it just be sunny if that's the case. So the idea is you got these clouds and you're expecting rain and they're not dropping any, and they're just disappointed and they're empty. That's what a false boaster is, who boasts in their giving when they're not actually what they are cracked up to be. Verse 15, by long forbearance a ruler is persuaded, and a gentle tongue breaks a bone. Soft answer turns away wrath. A gentle answer, a gentle tongue has power, can break a bone. Keeping your cool. Verse 16, have you found honey? Eat only as much as you need, lest you be filled with it and vomit. Here's a warning against too much of a good thing. We learned in the previous proverb that honey's good and that we should be eating it, and that's true. But now he warns against too much of a good thing. You got some honey, eat it, but only eat as much as you need, because if you overeat it, you could make yourself sick and you could throw up. So we don't want to overindulge in too much of a good thing, and that's easy to do. I mean, I've been trying to eat a little better at home. At least I'm doing good. When I go other places, it's harder. But yesterday, Chase and I did this fence project for someone in the church, and she goes, "Oh, here's these these Chips Ahoy cookies," and I haven't really eaten many sweets outside of Avery's cake on Sunday that she called me out on that I ate. But outside of that, I've been pretty good. So literally a whole pack of chocolate chip cookies. So Chase had 1.5, and I had a whole row. Then I had them in my truck, and I even said to him, I said, if I don't get rid of these, I will eat all of them. I'll eat all of them. And sure enough, last night, I ate them all, the whole pack. I cannot resist, and that's why I don't even buy that stuff. Doing too much of a good thing, just like honey, that's the point. Yeah, it's just like I can't handle it. I would eat all the honey, I'd eat all the cookies, and I'd make myself sick. So he warns against that. You don't want too much of a good thing, verse 17. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house. This is really good. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, lest he become weary of you and hate you. That's pretty true, right? It's like, don't overstay your welcome. Don't always be at the neighbors, maybe. Oh, they like me. I bet they like you better if you'd stay away a little bit, right? It's like, how come you're always here? You live there. So be wise. This is practical advice. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house. Otherwise, you're liable of having them, get weary of you and not liking you so much. You can invite people over and they don't know when to go home. It's like, well, I'm going to go to bed, so you can do what you want, but Hagen's going to bed. So just be, mindful of that. Be self-aware of some things. Verse 8, a man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a club, a sword, a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in the time of trouble is like a bad tooth and a foot out of joint. You don't want your confidence in the wrong place. You put your confidence in an unfaithful man in a time of trouble. That's like having a tooth that hurts or an ankle that's broken, a foot that's out of joint. It's not good news. It's not comfortable at all. Verse 20, like one who takes away a garment in cold weather, and like vinegar on soda is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. That's interesting. You're dealing with someone, you're ministering to someone with a heavy heart, and your solution is, I'm going to sing a song to them, a joyful song. Be careful, because that might just be like someone's really cold and you just take their coat away, or like you pour vinegar on soda, or some translations are kind of like you got a wound and you pour vinegar on it and it burns. You see someone sad and you immediately think your job is to make them happy by you being happy, when maybe this is what Paul teaches in Romans chapter 12, verse 15. This should be how we meet people and minister to people in that way. Romans chapter 12, verse 15. He says, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Instead of thinking, I got to come in and I got to be the fun guy and I got to sing a song to this person who's struggling, just if they're weeping, just weep with them. If they're heartbroken, just sit with them. Don't think you have to get them out of the funk right away, because you might actually be doing more damage than good. And so that's pretty good wisdom. Verses 21 and 22 says, if your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he's thirsty, give him water to drink. For so you will heap coals of fire on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Paul talks about this in Romans 12 as well. Romans chapter 12, verses 17 through 21. If your enemy's hungry, go ahead and feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. Because by you showing kindness to your enemy, it's as if you're heaping coals of fire on their head. One idea is that that's a really good thing. And that coals, back then they didn't have matches or lighters. So say, in your house it's cold and you have a fire and the fire goes out. You need to start a fire again. You go to your neighbor's house and borrow some coals from them. Hey, could I have some coals so that I can take it back over and start my fire easily? Because we don't have easy ways to start fire. So heaping coals on someone was you blessing them so they could go and start their fire again. That's probably a good way to see that culturally. Some people see, heaping coals of fire on your head as like you're burning them. Like you doing good to your enemy is like really getting them fired up, and it's kind of this revenge type of a thing. I don't know, you could maybe read it like that, but here's how Paul applied it in Romans chapter 12, starting in verse 17. And here's why it's probably not a negative thing, because of what the context, how he uses it. He says, repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of men. If it's possible, as much as depends upon you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him, and if he's thirsty, give him drink, for in so doing you will reap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So it's talked about in a positive light, not you're burning up your enemy, but you're blessing them by giving them what they need, food, drink, whatever the case might be. Back in Proverbs 25, verse 23, the north wind, it brings forth the rain, and the backbiting tongue, an angry countenance. It is better to dwell in the... I don't know why this comes up. This is the third time. It's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman. The first two times, Solomon put him in there. This is Solomon's writings that Hezekiah adds. Hezekiah goes, we need this 3 times at least. So it's right there. Verse 25 is cold water to a weary soul, so is good news from a far country. Just like nice, cold, refreshing water on a hot day, that's what like receiving good news from a faraway country of a friend that they're doing well. A righteous man who falters before the wicked is like a murky spring and a polluted well. It is not good to eat much honey, so to seek one's own glory is not good. Back to that, don't do too much of a good thing. You can overdo it. It's not good to eat too much honey. You're going to make yourself sick. In the same way, it's not good for you to seek your own glory. That's not real healthy either. You go, what's that? I don't know. Have you ever Googled yourself to see what the internet has to say about you? That's probably seeking your own glory. Jordan did some sort of AI thing to me on Monday night. There's this thing where AI can maybe recognize you if you're important enough. Did it recognize me? Yeah, that's good news, I guess. It's verse 28. Whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls. Rule over your spirit, or we'd use this word self-control. Whoever doesn't have any self-control, it's just like a city with these broken down walls. You got these walls, but they're no good. They're not doing their job. They're broken down. You're vulnerable. If you don't have control over your own spirit, if you don't have some self-control, you're vulnerable. You can, whether if that's anger or hatred or lust or whatever the case might be, if you don't have control, self-control, you're just vulnerable to attacks. So he says you want to be able to rule over your own spirit. You want to be able to say no. You want to be able to throw those cookies away and not eat all of them. But here's my thing about that. It's I don't know how calories work, but I think about them in days and I think about them in weeks. And it's if I'm going to eat, you're thinking, why not eat half today and half tomorrow? If it's just about calorie consumption, I don't really know if it matters if I eat them all tonight or tomorrow if I'm going to be consuming all of the calories. I think I might as well just eat them all today. That's my logic, at least. I don't know if that's true scientifically, but I think it's true. But there's that, like Jordan mentioned, next week, it's the family fun night at the fair. We've never helped at that before. They asked Jordan. He said, yes, I think it's good for us to go help at that. So we got kids signing up to help specifically with that. But like you mentioned, with that, we're going to have a booth there. At the booth, what are we going to be doing? Face painting? Balloon animals? And dunk tank, maybe a dunk tank. So if you want dunk Hagen, probably not that, but if you want to see Hagen, he might be there. But if you want to sign up to get dunked, do we need volunteers? Anyone want to raise their hand? No one. Yeah. We'll give you a free t-shirt. Yes. It's a good, Yes. If you don't know about Family Fun Night, the whole point, the fair goes on at the fairgrounds, and that night is specifically set aside for like no alcohol. It's just like family friendly. It's great for, that's like the night you want to bring your kids. So it's a cool thing to do. So for us to be able to be there and have a presence, we printed off invite cards for kids to come to youth group. Is that right, Jordan? Or going to? So with the booth and kids coming through, we'll be doing that. And it's just good to be around people in our community, and I mean, a lot of people go to the fairs, so even just us being present there that night, and you get a scone or whatever, you get your ice cream, you're just around, you run into people, you're talking, oh, our youth group's here helping serve, all this kind of stuff. It's a good way to be a witness. So you can stay at home if you want, or you can come out next week. But the week after that, we'll be continuing on in Proverbs. This Sunday, we're going to be in Colossians chapter 2, so you can read ahead. Hopefully, we'll look at the whole chapter. But Dennis reminded me of a song. I don't remember if he did it both services that we can close out in when he was here the week before last.